各位觀眾，大家好，歡迎收睇《仇恨邊緣》。我哋今日請到咗華裔選民教育委員會嘅行政主任李志威先生。Hi David, in last episode you talked about the vote and is the best way to again with the hate. So I would like to know, do you experience any hate story in the Bay Area?
Yes. In past years, we've heard stories about voters, Chinese voters, who go to the polling place only to be turned away because the poll workers asked them for identification, meaning more than simple identification. They asked for a passport, or they asked to see their citizenship naturalization papers, and that is absolutely not okay. They are not allowed to ask for those kinds of documents.
Like they don't have the right.
Yes, exactly. And that's a form of intimidation that forces many Chinese Americans, immigrants especially, to question whether are they really allowed to vote. And the answer is yes. They should not be asked for intensive forms of identification. In fact, anybody can vote without identification on a provisional ballot. Even if they don't have ID, their names are not on the voter rolls, they can vote on a provisional ballot. So no one should be turned away. But this is a form of intimidation for Chinese Americans. Another story is some elderly Chinese who need help with language, Cantonese or Mandarin, go to a polling place and there isn't translation services, and they are not able to get the help they need in order to answer the basic questions about how to use the ballot, what they're supposed to do, because it can be, for first-time voters, an intimidating process. So these are forms of anti-Asian intimidation that forces many of Chinese Americans to reevaluate, well, am I allowed here to vote? Do I have this right? And the answer is yes. We must remind people that they are absolutely within their right to go and vote and to have language assistance. If they don't have language assistance at that particular polling place, they can get it at another polling place. They just need to ask, where can I go to get Cantonese or Mandarin translation? I think they can also call us or email us, and we can help on election day direct people. But it is your right to vote. And these are forms of intimidation that cause people not to vote. Another is the messaging. We hear a lot of messaging, especially from some of the national politicians, that's very anti-immigrant. And voters, Chinese voters who hear that or hear disinformation on WeChat, in some cases, there have been known cases of misinformation that is found on Chinese language social media, telling them that they shouldn't vote, or that if they go out and vote, that they will be tracked by the government, or they will get in trouble for voting. These are all misinformation that is designed to prevent people, Chinese Americans, Asian Americans, from voting. And we have to fight that, to say, hey, look, it's your right to vote. Nobody can take that right away from you. You need to vote in order to fight hate. The best way to fight against anti-Asian hate is to vote. And so these are a couple of examples. Why is voting important? Why is this election important? Well, in San Francisco, where we are over, the Chinese American community, Asian American community is over 34% of the population here. We are seeing dramatic decline in representation in government. Of the 11 members of the Board of Supervisors, there's only one Asian American on the board. Of the 3 representatives in Sacramento in the Capitol, the state Senate, and 2 assembly seats, we only have one, and that representative, Phil Ting, is terming out, which means that he cannot run for another term. So we're looking at a situation in San Francisco where even though our Asian population is growing, our Asian registration is growing. Asians are 26% of the registered voters, the largest voting bloc in San Francisco, and Chinese is the most popular language of voters other than English, and it's 6 times more popular than Spanish in San Francisco. So that tells you the Chinese vote is powerful. It's a large block of votes, but only if it votes and only if the community come out to vote. And a lot is at stake. Our representation at every level of government we're losing representation, and it's really important to have representation in Sacramento, in City Hall, so that our community, the Chinese American, Asian American community, can have people who will fight, leaders that will fight for the community's interests. And that's why the vote is so important.
Thank you for explaining that. Sure. And then I find the data that I would like to share with you. It's a report by the Leadership Conference Education Fund. And then it highlights that like the chance of the hate crime whenever is like get to the corner of the election season, especially against to the African American and Asian community. So what's your comments?
The reason is these are efforts by groups that do not want to see Chinese and Asian Americans voting, do not want to see African Americans voting. And why? Because it threatens their ability to elect their leaders to office. And that's why we as a community need to fight against it. We need to reinforce the idea for our community that voting is so important, and even especially at a time when people are telling you not to vote, people are telling you to stay home because they have their own interests. Their own interest is to get their people elected to office. Chinese Americans, Asian Americans need to come together to make sure that our own people, our own representatives are able to get into office so that we can have representation that is representative of the people who live and work in San Francisco, which right now our government is not representative. We don't have enough representation. If you look at our school district, for instance, the one lone Chinese American on the school board is not running for re-election. So there's a possibility where we will not have a single member of the school board. This is a school district whose largest group is Chinese American, Asian Americans, and not to have representation at the school board board of trustees, I think is really distressing to a lot of leaders in the community where such a large population comes from our community in the school district.
That means no one can speak for that.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why representation is really key. And I am an educator. I've worked in City College at San Francisco State, community college system, fighting for public education. And I can tell you that what's really important is to have representatives who care about public education. Our kids, our future of our community depends on public education. And right now our public education system in San Francisco is really under threat. City College of San Francisco is under threat of losing accreditation. Our K-12 system is under threat of a possible state takeover. These are, San Francisco State itself has seen a $6 million budget cut and dramatically falling enrollments. So all three of our major systems here in the city serve largely Chinese Americans. This is the future of our community who are getting their education so they can have a job, so they can stay in the city, they can afford to buy a home in the city, raise families here. They're under threat. And unless we have representation who will fight for public education, fight for our families, our community will be suffering.
Okay, thank you for sharing the story and all of this. Thank you, David. 好，我哋今日好多謝李志威先生嚟到我哋嘅節目，我哋下一節依然都會有佢同我哋講講關於呢個仇恨嘅故事。